fast.
Yeah, so this is a matchup, as you'd say, from the red side, you kind of like where Tom sits here.
Yeah, and Brad's deck is a little bit light on the critical cards.
All right, we're going to see Tom starting with one of his aggressive starts. He has Fire Drinker Satyr. Remember, there are 21 drops in this deck. Almost the entire creature base is priced at 1.
And a lot of Tom's creature base is informed by the presence of creatures in Jund monsters. You see a lot of pump spells. Rubble Maka does good work against Caryatid and Corsair Crewfix. And Fire Drinker Satyr is a pretty good threat against those creatures as well.
Yeah, one thing you'd said, this deck better than mono red against creatures, worse against removal, but that's got to be pretty good here. Turn 2, he crashes in with an Ash Zealot. It joins Fire Drinker Satyr, and he's already on the board for 4 damage. Brad's down to 16.
Now, Brad has drawn Scavenging Ooze, possibly his best card in the matchup if he's able to slow the game down a little bit.
Yeah, and you see, not starting with the Ooze, he's going to start with Sylvan Caryatid. Brad has to expect that Tom is going to go ahead and crash through the Sylvan Caryatid, which should provide some fodder for the Ooze when Brad decides to play it.
That is now Brad's game plan.
And Tom is just going to go ahead and swing into that. A pair of Legion Loyalists, the entire team crashes. And you see, he's opting just to commit more creatures. He could have waited and tried to pump the Fire Drinker Satyr through the Caryatid. Instead, he just wants more mass. Willing to spend a card in Titan Strength to get rid of the Sylvan Caryatid.
Still, the Scry's valuable here, and Caryatid just facilitates so many powerful stuff out of Brad's deck.
Yeah, now Ross pointing out an interaction here. Because he had Legion Loyalist, his creatures get First Strike and Trample. The Trample relevant because now when he Titan Strength, that extra damage isn't lost as the Ash Zealot spills over for 2.
And look, Brad already at 10, facing down 4 creatures.
Yeah, and no sweepers in Brad's deck other than he has Mizium Mortars. That's going to be far too slow for this matchup.
And you see him, he's gripping, he has the option of playing Scavenging Ooze and pumping this turn to a 3/3. He's gripping these Ravnica dual lands. Can he afford to take 2 points of damage here getting this Ooze into play? If he plays a land tap and casts the Scavenging Ooze, does it even survive the next turn?
Yeah, when asked about the format, whether or not Tom Ross believed Standard was an open format or mostly solved, he said he thinks it's still open because players do not respect extreme strategies enough. And you kind of look at that, Brad hasn't really had a chance to play this game yet.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with his draw.
No, I mean, he had Temple into Caryatid. That's a standard start out of a lot of decks that's pretty good in most matchups. But you see, already almost dead. Ross is going to go ahead and swing. Brad will activate Mutavault here. Going to try to eat a Legion Loyalist. Tom at least is going to get to hit for 5. He could pump for 6. Let's see what happens here. And we'll see Rubble Belt Maka on Legion Loyalist, and Brad's going to have the ultimate price. That'll be the 2-for-1. So Brad did shock himself when he was at 10. He's down to 8. So Brad scores the 2-for-1, gets to keep his Mutavault, but he does take 5. That's going to put him down to 3. If he's played it really well, but if Tom has that Lightning Strike, will be all for naught.
Yeah, and this really speaks to what Tom's deck is capable of. Brad with a totally fine start, got a lot of the pieces of the puzzle that he needs, played very well, and I don't even think Scavenging Ooze is close to pulling Brad back into the game here.
Yeah, he can play Ooze, he can pump Ooze, and he can block a creature, and it looks like he'll still be taking lethal.
Yeah, and Lightning Strike is the last card in Tom's hand.
And this is what I mean when Tom says extreme strategies. Like, Brad just simply couldn't interact with this draw. It was too much damage too fast.
I mean, I like a good beatdown. Don't get me wrong here. I build pretty aggressive decks myself. And Tom's is on a totally different planet than what I do.
Yeah, I was like, this is aggressive even for an aggressive deck.
Yes.
Let's see here, Brad. And I like how Brad played it. He scored a 2-for-1 off the Maka. He's got to be pretty happy with that. Has had a card every turn of the game, and each card has interacted.
Well, Tom's going to score a 5-for-1 here because Brad's going to die with 5 cards in his hand. So that's a source of card advantage too,
Spoken like a red player. All right, game 1 goes to Tom Ross.
And that's a great start there for Tom, and what else can you say there? that's
Lighting
an explosive
things on fire.
That is an explosive start. The kind of card advantage that I like. Opponent dies
right.
with spells in hand.
All right, back in the booth here, Matthias, joined by Patrick Sullivan. You're watching the Invitational Top 8 match here between Tom Ross and Brad Nelson. And a quick game one, 4 minutes in, and Tom Ross is up a game. But we're bringing you back to give you some trivia. So this is going to be 3 months of Star City Games Premium. If you weren't watching this morning, rules are the same. Tweet the correct answer to the trivia question with the hashtag SCG Premium on your tweet. After the conclusion of all our Top 8 matches, we will pick one of those correct answers, and that person will win 3 months of Star City Games Premium. So that said, we're featuring a red deck, mono red here. I'm going to throw the trivia question over to you.
So Tom's deck, as these decks happen to be usually, a lot of 4-ofs, particularly in the creature base. There is 1 2-of in Tom's deck that is there as a, kind of a hybrid between a creature and a pump spell. Name that creature. Yeah. Again, tweet your answer at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium, and make sure you're following us on Twitter so we can get that answer over to you.
I wonder how many times Tom's even cast this as a creature during the course of the tournament.
I have cast it a few times myself, but usually my decks go up a little higher.
Okay.
It
seems like it's more often a spell.
Listen, they got Abrupt Decay in their deck. Can't kill it.
Right.
You can't Abrupt Decay that thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well,
that's come up.
Let's look at the player's sideboard. We saw Brad almost unable to interact game one. He's going to have something to do in the postboard games. I think his plan starts with a Golgari Charm. Where does it go from there?
Well, the Golgari Charm is helpful here. Tom's deck, of course, a lot of one-touchless creatures. The 2 Doom Blades help a lot to slow this game down. I think Mizzium Mortars is good enough to bring in. I don't think Putrefy gets it done. Normally, this comes in almost any creature matchup. I think Tom just brings too much speed to the table to mess around with that, though he may want additional spot removal. And the 2 copies of Chandra. This is a better win condition than anything else Brad has in his deck. Even something like Palicranos can be too slow a good portion of the time. Chandra is excellent at gunning down Tom's sea of 1 toughness creatures. So I think you're going to see that come in. I think Brad's going to do some extreme sideboarding himself. Cards like Domri and even Stormbreath Dragon may be way too slow for this kind of matchup, especially when he's capable of winning the game pretty easily with Scavenging Ooze or Chandra on a pretty stable board. So I think you're going to see Brad remove cards from his deck that he's probably never removed before to get the requisite speed to keep up with Tom.
Yeah, it looks like, it seems that the game plan for Brad is mana cost, mana cost, mana cost.
Yes.
Basically every expensive spell, he's going to find the cheapest spells in his 75 and play almost all of them.
Correct.
On Tom's side, this is a matchup he likes, and he does have some ways that it gets even better after board. He has, let's start with Peak Eruption. That's a card that's pretty good against red decks. Now, not all of Brad's lands are mountains. However, a timely Peak Eruption could be pretty devastating.
I've never known exactly what to do in this kind of matchup here. Usually I bring him in on the play and not on the draw. There are only 8 targets in Brad's deck, but the upside is enormous. I think that if he brings in any of his 3-mana spells, that's going to warrant bringing in the Mutavault as an 18th lane. He's a little shy on mana to facilitate 3-mana spells. I think he's also going to want the Harness by Force here. Great if Brad taps out for something like Palicranos.
Yeah, so the Harness by Force, basically just a threat and will be good against Palicranos. As you said, the card I want to look at here, and this is something which I have to think I'm suspecting is for the Jund Monsters matchup. This is Seismic Stomp.
Yeah, I think anything that allows you to get through on the ground like this is really valuable. If Brad wins the game, it's going to be because he gums up the board with enough blockers to contain Tom's smaller creatures. So one of Seismic Stop here is a good upgrade for Tom in the matchup.
Yeah, this is among the more extreme cards in Tom Ross's list. This is a common that doesn't even make the cut in draft often from M14. Rarely seen constructed. He plays this and a Blinding Flare. That's the Strive spell for red that makes creatures not be able to block. He has a lot of ways to basically swing through Brad, even if Brad starts getting things like Courser of Crewfix, Scavenging Ooze going.
And I imagine this is exactly the type of matchup where he wants that kind of card, where people are trying to block with those green creatures.
Yeah, this is a 1-of out of his board. Like I said, do imagine we'll see that. Now, one card that I think is interesting, it's in his board. He's playing 2 Eidolon of the Great Revel in the board. That's a new card, which we've seen from Journey into Nyx. Now, a lot of these red decks, I've seen been happy to main deck the card. I hear red mages just saying, hey, this card is good. It's just good across the board. Because if an opponent wants to beat you, they're going to have to lower their mana curve. And when they do, then they're caught between a rock and a hard place. I'm interested he's playing 2 out of the board. So I'm curious when this comes in. It's not in the main deck.
Yeah, and I think that there's enough decks in the format that are capable of racing, and everything in Tom's deck triggers it. So it is a cost to have game one. He may bring in the sideboarded games simply because Brad's bringing in a lot of cheap removal himself, so he's more likely to be triggering the Eidolon. That said, Brad's deck is still capable of racing and casting 4 and 5 mana spells, so I'm not positive that Tom's going to want to go to Eidolon. This is the type of matchup typically where I would want to stay away from Eidolon if I was in Tom's shoes, but knowing how many 2 mana spells Brad is bringing in, he may want to add it to the deck.
So it's not necessarily whether or not Eidolon is good. Eidolon is fine. The question is maybe whether Eidolon's better than the cards he already has.
Right. Is it better than Ash Zealot, for example? I suspect the answer is no.
All right, we have a couple updates here across the board. All of our game ones have finished. We have, going through, Logan Mize takes game 1 from Ben Friedman, Alex Bertoncini up a game on Chi Hoi Yim, and Jared Betcher up a game on Reed Duke.
And that's of all those games there, the most important one in my mind is Jared, because Reed's now really back against the wall. He has to win 3 out of 4 games against an opponent who's cutting spot removal for duresses.
Yeah, the control, so far the Revelation decks all losing their game 1s. That's usually one of their best games. Maybe spell some trouble for both Chi Hoi Yim and Reed Duke.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice, leaving up for game 2. Brad is on the play here. So I was talking about this in terms of breaking serve. You know, Tom got to win game 1, and I know it's a 5-game set, so there's a lot of chances here, but you have to think any game where Brad's on the draw, he's a pretty big underdog. How important is it then that Brad at least gets the games where he's on the play?
Brad's going to be really hard pressed to win this matchup if he loses game 2, because he's going to have to win. He's going to have to win several games in a row on the draw. He has to do it eventually, but I think it's critical for him to take games 2 and 4.
Yeah, if he drops one of the games on the play, he'll have to win twice on the draw of the remaining 2 games. That seems like a pretty tall order for him.
I mean, being on the play is significant in most matchups, especially against a deck as extreme as Tom's.
Yeah, we see that actually seems like one of the things that's generally true in Magic. As decks become more extreme, you know, you see like combo decks and Legacy, especially like Belcher style decks. The more extreme a deck gets, it seems like the more it cares about the die roll.
Correct. Like draft decks and seal decks don't really care that much about the die roll.
Sometimes even want to lose it.
Yeah. And in Vintage and Legacy, the die roll is a huge influence. So
we see here, Brad's going to get to start. He starts with a Temple, as he did last game. Whether or not he curves into Caryatid, we will see. And now we see what one-drop Tom starts with. Given the choice, he started on Fire Drinker Satyr last turn. It seems like that's the preferred one, possibly Foundry Street Denizen.
If his hand is a certain way, then it's Foundry Street Denizen. Usually it's Fire Drinker Satyr because it's something that can attack on turn 2, even if Brad plays a Sylvan Caryatid.
Yeah, we see Rakdos Cackler. That's the 2/2. Brad with a turn 2 play. It's just going to be Mizium Mortars, trying to keep pace with Tom's spell count, it seems.
And I think the reason that he led with Rakdos Cackler is because he wanted to put a Madcap skills on something, and the Rakdos Cackler is immune to certain removal spells out of Brad's deck.
Yeah, you do see, I think you're right on, there's a Crowan Crusader hiding out in his hand. That's certainly something I wouldn't mind putting a Madcap skills on. And interestingly enough, Tom had the choice of Eidolon of the Great Rebel. Instead opts for the double 1-drop play. It's Rakdos Cackler and a Crowan Crusader.
Well, the Crusader is a worse target than the Cackler for a number of reasons. Doomblade, Golgari Charm, Chandra. So even though you want to get the heroic trigger, the Cackler is a much safer place to put that Madcap skills.
It's interesting to me that we have a 1/1 heroic creature and we have a 2-mana aura, and you're saying no, the heroic guy is the worst target for the aura, and I'm with you on it too.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's fraught with peril using creature enchantments against a deck that boards into so much removal. So Tom has to be very selective on what creatures he puts it on. He's always going to be exposing himself to a 2/1 in any case, but if he can at least get in one shot, and sometimes Brad's hands are going to be randomly set up in such a place where he can't answer a Rakdos Cackler, and it's able to do, possibly upwards of 10 or 15 damage.
Yeah, so Brad's going to go ahead and shock here for Overgrown Tomb, wanting that black mana right away. We'll see what he makes. Watching him in the Swiss, it seems like Tom only likes to play Madcap skills on boards where he's guaranteed that initial 3 damage.
Yeah, he has to use all of his resources here. He can't just be throwing enchantments on things with Brad having mana up. And if you look at Brad's hand here, it's Palakronos and Chandra. He cannot answer Madcap skills on Rakdos Cackler, so it's 5 damage this turn and then 5 damage the next turn if Tom goes down that road.
So walk me through this. Brad shocked for Overgrown Tomb, and he main phased Doombladed the Crowan Crusader. I'm a little confused as to why he would do that instead of waiting to see if Tom went for an aura.
I think because once he plays the Overgrown Tomb, the jig is up, and maybe there's some world where Tom is happy just making the 1/1.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, so if he lets Tom untap, Tom could get the free 1/1.
Right.
better to take the option away. And we do see Tom now taking the shields down moment to use a Madcap skills. Rakdos Cackler now a 5-2. Brad's down to 13, but with one more kill spell, Brad will be fine here. And here's an opening for Tom. Brad taps out for Pelucranos, so there's going to be 5 more guaranteed damage. That Madcap skill is going to work.
And Tom just being rewarded for picking the right target for this Madcap skills. And you can see why he played the Cackler on turn 1 instead of the Crusader.
Yep, swings for 5 more. He makes Eidolon of the Great Revel. Going to pass back. Brad is down to 8. With a 5th land, he'll be able to eat one of Tom's creatures, but will it be enough? He's taken a lot of damage up to this point.
Yeah, he's drawn a Domri here, so he can use that to fight the Rakdos Cackler, but that is not a great use of resources. He can cast his Sylvan Caryatid, but that causes him to take 2 and forces a double block. Tom's putting him in all sorts of squeezes here.
It seems like in this matchup, Brad can take that first hit off Madcap skills, but it almost seems like he can never take a second hit off, and it's so much damage. And Brad scries with Temple, and now he goes into the tank. He's got about 1 or 2 spells left to close this game.
Yeah.
It seems like if he can take care of the board here, he'll get a free monster off Pelucranos for the next creature. He should be fine. The question is, like, he just needs to not die on the next turn.
Well, the issue here is if he plays a Caryatid, then he double blocks the Rakdos Cackler. He loses Pelucranos, takes 2 off the Eidolon, takes 2 from casting the Caryatid. He's at 4, and it's still under the gun here. So
yeah, there's still an Eidolon left on the board, and Brad's at 4. He can hardly cast another spell at that point.
Yeah.
What I think ideally would want would be a kill spell for this 5-2. I don't think he has it.
No, again, he has Domri and he can fight, but again, then there's an Eidolon in play, and he takes 2 off of the Eidolon, and it's just another trade, so.
Yeah, remember, even holding back that removal spell wouldn't have helped. Even though Tom's playing mono red, there's some incidental damage happening here. Doomblade couldn't have taken care of Rakdos Cackler, even if it wanted to.
Yep.
Brad's going to go with the line. I don't think he's happy with the line. He goes to 6 for that Sylvan Caryatid. I think he's going to make that double block play you mentioned. That is fraught with peril.
Yeah.
And you see a Dragon Mantle drawn by Tom Ross. One of the spicier cards in the deck, but one that's going to be pretty efficient in this situation. And second Eidolon of the Great Revel for Tom. He shocks himself. Now when he swings here, if he swings out, Brad is going to be forced into blocking the Cackler, but then he'll be at 4, and there'll be 2 Eidolons out. Brad won't even be able to play cards anymore.
Yeah, so all of a sudden cards like, Corsair Krufix or Domri aren't even castable.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen. So, wow, look at this play. Okay, Brad makes the block. There's going to be a trade there. Tom's going to go ahead and shock, I believe, Brad right in the face. 2 to Brad, 4 to Tom. Fair trade for him. And now we have Brad down to 2, pardon me, with 2 Eidolon of the Great Rebels in play.
Can't cast many spells in his deck. Scavenging Ooze, Corsair, removal spells. He is locked.
And we see an Ash Zealot hiding in Tom's hand. That's going to be too much damage. Game 2 goes to Tom Ross.
And if you're Brad, it's, again, that's one of his better hands. It didn't have Scavenging Ooze, but it had plenty of removal. It had a Palicranos, which is one of his better cards.
And Chandra, you said that was his preferred win con.
Yeah, Chandra never even entered play. I mean, that's a tough game to lose.
I'm going to go on the limit. I'm going to say this matchup seems just rough for Brad.
Well, I think that if he's able to go removal spell into Scavenging Ooze, he has a real shot. Ooze is a problematic card for Tom.
But without that card, I mean, he had almost his choice of, well, not almost his choice of spells. He had pretty good ones. I think Corsair Krufix also can do some lifting in this match.
Yes. But, with the red decks that I play, Palicranos is a really threatening card. I regularly lose to it. It looks in that game like maybe that card's too slow for this matchup.
I mean, Brad had a Pelucranos on 4, and Tom was perfectly content just playing Madcap skills on an X2 into the Pelucranos, almost daring Brad to make land 5 and kill his X2.
Yeah. So, Tom there, elements of this deck look pretty mindless. I mean, 21 drops and a bunch of pump spells. You saw that game. There's a lot of people who I think their instinct would just be, yeah, of course I put Madcap skills on my heroic creature. I want to get a free 1/1. Tom knows that he can't just line himself up for 2-for-1s in this matchup. He's going to have to slog through enough 2-for-1s as it is. So he made sure that it stayed on the Cackler because that cuts off cards like Doomblade, like Ultimate Prize. Golgari Charm can't 2-for-1 him. Chandra doesn't work.
Yeah, one thing I like, and I've watched Tom play this deck, is I think he realizes just how important his board presence is. One of the things that you have to watch out for is if you lose all your creatures, I mean, your cards are pretty bad at the end of the day. All you have is one drop. You're playing Foundry Street Denizen. It's like you said, why don't you slam the turn 2 Madcap skills? Well, the problem is then Brad can just kill your guy and then you're done.
Yeah. He has to, I think Tom's trying to play the game in such a way where, he will put stuff on the board, he'll exhaust some of Brad's removal, and then Madcap skills can go on something and put Brad to the test of having yet another removal spell or drawing one right away. I doubt you're going to see Tom go turn 1 creature, turn 2 Madcap skills, unless it's Rakdos Cackler and he has nothing else to do. And even when it's Rakdos Cackler, Brad has 3 copies of Mizzium Mortars in his list. There's a risk there.
Yeah, I like how he's able to keep up pressure, just playing things at the right time. He never lets up.
Yeah.
All right, going to some of our other matches. Ben Friedman evens things up against Logan Mize at 1 apiece, whereas Reed, the hole goes deeper. Jared Betcher takes game 2 as well.
And now Reed really up against the wall.
Yeah, Betcher's deck good against what Reed is trying to do. Especially, it's a difficult matchup. Remember, Betcher has a lot of hate for that blue-white control. Like, he has Sire of Insanity, he has Hammer of Perforos, he has Erebos, he has 3 Rakdos returns post-board.
It's rare that you see the black splash red devotionless or black splash anything really go that deep into a second color. Jared with a lot of double red spells, as you mentioned. Even the main deck, Chandra.
Yeah, Chandra, Hammer of Perforos. We generally don't see double mana. The black-white mid-range deck that Ben Friedman's playing can do that sometimes.
Yeah.
You see, basically Jared's making that size of commitment to red, it would seem. He has Blood Crypts, he has Temples, he has a Mana Confluence. Didn't go so far as to add Guild Gates, but he's not too far from it.
And talk about a fast matchup here. We're in the Invitational, where in the elimination rounds, play typically slows down a little bit. Players want to be careful. We're in game 3 in under 21 minutes.
I mean, you can play as slow as you want, but when there's only 3 turns apiece in a game, it's not going to take that long. Brad on the play, and here's the difficult part. Brad needs this game, and then he's gonna have to win twice on the draw to take this match.
And we saw Brad on the play with a totally functional hand got killed on the 5th turn.
So, 1 game at a time for him. Sees if he can keep this. It looks like he doesn't know if he's keeping or shipping back. I don't think his hand has what he wants in it, but I almost think you need to aggressively mulligan against Thomas here, mainly for the reason that if you die fast, you're going to die with cards in your hand. Those cards might as well not be there.
This is not a normal matchup. You cannot keep hands of just some lands and some spells like you can in nearly any other matchup.
Right.
You need specific tools.
It's like when you play against Belcher, right? If you don't have the Force of Will in your hand, I don't care how many Stoneforge Mystics you have. All right, in our other match, Chi Hoi Yim ties it up. So we have 1 apiece with him and Alex Bertoncini. A lot of them heading to at least 4. We do see in Brad's hand, it had an Elvish Mystic, did not have the untapped green. He does have Courser of Krufix. He draws Mizzium Mortars. That's a huge draw for him.
Yeah, this is a much better pacing here. Not taking damage off of his lands, a lot of cheap forms of interaction, a Courser of Krufix. This is the type of draw Brad can win with.
All right, we'll see how Tom responds. He has Cackler. How bad is the damage going to be? That's the question. 2, and it's just going to be Ash Cell. So a crash for 4. Brad's down to 16. But you would think that Course of Krufix can help out some here.
It's a big piece of the puzzle here for Brad to win.
And the draw for Brad, Sylvan Caryatid. Lots of cheap spells. His lands are coming into play tapped right now, which is a little bit of hurt for him. You can look at the relevant cards he has. He has Pelucranos, Courser, Mizzium Mortars, Sylvan Caryatid. I think his next land is an Overgrown Tomb, so he'd have to shock if he wants to double spell this turn.
I think that I would start this turn by just casting Courser or Krufix, playing a land. It's an effective blocker. Taking 2 to play Palicranos here is really dangerous. A lot of the stuff that kills Courser or Krufix at this spot in combat also kills Palicranos. Tom is flush with +3 effects, 4 Titan Strength, Madcap skills if that comes up, and his Makas as well.
The danger with the play, and I think this is what Brad's looking at, with Courser of Krufix, is if the trick your opponent has his Madcap skills, fine. You get to kill him with Mortars. If he has Mako, we can't really play around that one. But the real danger is if Tom has a Titan Strength. That matches up really dangerously for Brad.
Yep. And now this is even another moment of contemplation here. Brad's ultimately putting the forest into play here untapped, but he looked at his hand for a long time, almost turned down the forest off the top of his deck to just get one of his Ravnica duels into play tapped at no cost.
Yeah, wants his lands to not hurt himself. Getting extra cards really not the priority here.
Yeah, if he's gonna win, it's gonna be probably with a pretty overwhelming advantage in raw card count.
Yeah, so I think when you look at it when you're Brad, you just kind of plan next turn. It's like, well, if I already have the best cards in my deck to play next turn, no sense in drawing more right now. Next turn matters just so much more than everything else. We see another Ash Zealot for Tom and a full swing with 1 red up. And this is just a check on Titan's strength. If Tom has it, this is real bad for Brad.
But it's hard to imagine Brad just taking 6 here against an opponent that theoretically has giant Titan Strength or Maka in hand.
So here's the question. Brad can block an Ash Zealot if he thinks he's just taking generic damage. He can't play on Titan Strength. If he blocks an Ash Zealot, though, he opens himself up to Shock as a straight removal spell. If he blocks Cackler with the Courser, then at least he gets the guy if he gets a Shock.
Yes. But these Ash Zealots are kind of a priority to get off the board because as first strikers, they plus a +3 effect just eats Palachronos.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of considerations here. Do you want to, what's your game plan? I think if you're Brad, you want to block the Cackler. I think you'd rather take your for sure creature, unless there's a Titan Strength, and there was no way to play around that one. Tom getting the kill spell that scries for 1.
Yep.
And that's real bad news for Brad, but as we said before, this was the danger of the play. 2/4 is a good size, but just not big enough.
But what are you going to take 6 here, leave him with Titan Strength in his hand? He's kind of stuck there.
Yeah, as we've seen before, Brad can have some perfectly reasonable hands and play them very well, but if Tom has the right combination, there's little Brad can do to stop it.
Correct.
Game 1, for example, Brad played very well and just got run over. His deck wasn't equipped to deal with it.
Yep.
So Pelucranos, Mizium Mortars, all options for Brad. He's going to make the Pelucranos, play a land, pass back. And you see Tom just going to jump on this opportunity. He has at least 1 Madcap skills. Brad's going to take a lot of damage here. And I almost want to say he has, I believe, a Harness by Force in his hand. That's pretty good against this Pelucranos.
Doing some math here.
Yeah, if he steals Pelucranos and swings, that's 11. I do not. Yeah, Harness is going to take the Pelucranos.
Come to daddy.
Put him down to 2. This is pretty big. Now, if Brad has an untapped basic mountain, does he play 1? He could overload Mizium Mortars.
And that's such a good play here. Tom knows that overloaded Mizium Mortars is something he has to play around. And by knocking Brad to exactly 2, he's putting a lot of pressure on Brad to have an untapped land this turn, which there just aren't that many of in the deck. I mean, there's 4 forests, 2 Mutavaults, and a Temple of Mana Confluence, so not a lot.
He doesn't even have the untapped. It would have to be Mana Confluence. He doesn't have triple red right now. Yeah, so Brad can't wait and overload it. He's going to play Sylvan Caryatid, and he'll Mortars away an Ash Zealot. Can Tom win here? I believe the answer is yes. And he just draws Shock, so yes.
Wow.
A clinic there.
Wow, that was fast.
27 minutes, takes all 3 games. He moves on to the semifinals, defeating Brad in 3 short games. Sly is going to make it through.
Brad was on the play games 2 and 3 with totally acceptable hands and just could not keep up.
Game 1 was a blowout.